All right, welcome. Today we have another episode of Less Kevin, More Tech. So, Kevin, where are you? All right. So, must be it is a nice day. There's great weather outside, so we know where Kevin's at. So, but fortunately, we have an outstanding guest, a partner of UTech, so who we really appreciate, and they've helped us out. I know a lot of you folks out there, a lot of companies are having issues attracting talent and retaining talent, and a fantastic partners of ours is Washtenaw Community College, and so as our relationships between Washtenaw and UTech continue to grow, we're very happy that the folks that we're getting are outstanding. And a lot of it has to do with their careering department. So today's guest, Kyrsten Rue. Kyrsten?
Thank you. Hi, Les.
How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Thanks a lot for coming by.
It's my pleasure.
So let's just start out because we've had a fantastic relationship. The job fairs work great. The internships are excellent, and we're excited about the apprenticeship program coming down the path.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about you.
Okay.
All right. So maybe hit a little bit on the personal side, and then when we get to the work side, tell us about your job title, because it is one of the most amazingly long titles that there is. And so let's just get it started.
Okay. I'm Kyrsten Rue. I have a master's degree, bachelor's degree. I started my educational career after high school at a community college, so I'm very connected to the community college personally,
Right.
And also just the mission of the community college is very centered toward my interests and passion.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I am a mom to two kids. So
Wow.
My son Harper is 9 and my daughter Ruby is 6.
So you're balancing that whole family work,
Yes.
and then this crazy time of remote work and non-remote. That's a challenge.
Yeah. Some days balance is not really what comes from that, but yes, I'm doing my best. Yeah.
I've heard sometimes that living a balanced life is not good.
Yeah. Right.
I've heard that, even
Yes,
though everybody talks about work-life balance, but
Yeah. It's something that you certainly strive for.
Right.
You know, I mean, I think that one thing about working connected to your passion, right, is that it gives you purpose. It makes you excited about being at work and away from the other pieces of your life that are really meaningful for you. So to have meaning at work is very important.
So you just hit on two words: purpose and passion.
Uh-huh.
So what? Let's dive into that. What is
Sure.
what do you feel is your passion and your purpose?
Yeah, I think that obviously evolves pretty regularly, but it's always been centered in listening to people's stories and helping people connect things that maybe they don't even know exist, right? Especially as we're really first exploring what do we want to do with our lives. We don't know exactly what's available, what's out there.
Yeah.
And so to be able to talk to folks about, what their interests are, what they've been successful at in their previous roles, or even just in life with family and what they're connected to and what gives them energy at the end of the day. That's what I'm really trying to focus on.
That's cool.
Yeah. And this is a great space for me, working in higher education is a great space for me to be able to live that out. And then, of course, I have other passions. Like I'm a baker. I like to bake.
Really?
Yeah.
So
And a thrifter. That's one of my favorite things to do on my downtime is to go.
is that like one of those TV shows, the like Incredible Couponing, or?
I just pick. I like to go to garage sales and estate sales and vintage stores. And
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's part of like environmental sustainability. I think that buying used versus buying new is an important thing for me. And so I try to do that where and when I can.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of passion there,
Sure, yeah.
and we've worked together, so I've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
How are you living that through it at WCC?
Yeah.
And let us tell us your job title, because
sure.
it takes up 2 lines on the business card.
My job title is I'm the manager of Experiential Learning and Employer Relationships. So, I think that in most of my work experience so far, I'll kind of go back to where I started in getting into this pathway. I failed my first semester of college, dropped out. Very common story, right? I really wasn't connected to what I was learning. I look back at my transcripts and I see D, W, F, and I go, oh boy,
Yeah.
And then I went and I worked and did a couple of, just shipping and receiving and customer service and that type of work, and decided to go back to school. Experiential, right? And then I went back to school and changed my major. 8 times.
Nice.
Probably.
Nice.
So that process of trying to figure that out, I saw all my friends. Most of my friends are nurses, so they were very direct.
Focused.
Yes, they
Knew
knew
what they were
exactly
doing.
what they were doing.
Yeah.
But I figured it out when I did my internship. So I did my internship at the end of my undergraduate at U of M in Dearborn, and I did a psych. I was an intake specialist at a counseling center.
Okay.
And then I got hired as the teaching assistant for the internship class and helped some of the students find internships.
That's awesome.
So I started working with
At
employers.
U of M Dearborn.
Yep, at U of M Dearborn.
Wow.
And my teacher in that class was a great mentor to me and really helped me connect all the things that I had been learning in my psych classes to this type of exploration and connection to, just that passion finding.
So learning connected to real world application.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. So, I mean, this is an incredible story, because what I heard you say is that you started out, didn't know what you were doing, failed, and instead of staying down, you brushed yourself, and got back up and figured some things out, and now you have 3 levels of higher education.
Yes, 3 levels of higher ed.
Wow.
And I was out of higher ed, but I've always been in workforce development. I was in Michigan Works. That was my first job after I graduated with my undergrad. And I did youth program management, I was also in part of the JET program, which helped people that were on temporary assistance for needy families to help find jobs and get into educational pathways. And so it's always been my connected space. I'm really enjoying now in this role, while I'm still connected to the experiential learning and internship and co-op and working with students, now I'm kind of really more focused on the employer connection. And so really figuring out, what do you need and what are your thoughts and what are you as an employer and a partner in that way, really trying to connect to in students, right? And so hearing what your pain points are and hearing where your needs are in connecting to students and how we can kind of make sure that there's a really strong match that's happening.
Right. So, in your title, there was 2 aspects to it, right?
Yes, right.
Right. So the one part is that you have to go out in the community, right?
Yes.
Find businesses like ours that have pain points.
Mm-hmm.
And then internally create programs and work with people within the college, right? And then kind of bring them together.
That's right.
That's a lot.
Yeah, and it's a very important piece of the puzzle to have employers and educators working together. And sometimes we speak very different languages and we have very different objectives in the relationship with students. And so I think that that's part of, my mission in this role is to really figure out how can we get everybody kind of working toward the same end goal and understanding what that looks like from the student perspective. So centering our, what we're doing and our goals on the students, I think is a very important piece of that, both from the educator's perspective and the hiring.
So how do you do that? Because I a lot of people are entering in the community college and they're trying to re-career.
Yes.
Or they're trying to figure out direction.
Yes.
So there's a lot of folks there that are trying to,
figure it out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so you're over here providing a pathway, but how do you communicate a pathway or an alternative pathway to such a diverse group of students?
Yeah. Well, we have formal processes in place. I work with an awesome team that are career advisors, so they work directly with the students, and they do assessments and really kind of talk about have them actually go through that process of saying like, what are my skills? What is my knowledge base? What are my values at work? And what am I good at? What do I like? Right. And so there are assessments that help students figure those things out in a real formal way, but then tying it to a career via an educational pathway. That's the part that, that piece with the employer and educator partnership is important. So some of the ways that we encourage employers to partner in that way are job shadowing experiences, have people come out and do conversations with people that are working in fields. We have a professionals in the classroom program where people that are working in specific fields can go into and talk to a specific group of students to be able to kind of shed some light on
That's cool.
their career.
So, and it's working well?
Yeah, I mean, that's always the hardest part of figuring out, like, getting that survey response and the data of where things are. I think there's always just room for improvement and that's why people that are in my role and working across different areas is important to figure out. I think that when everything that you see in local data and national data is that if a student is going through some type of experiential education, and that can be as simple as a job shadowing experience, and it ties them more closely. But when you get somebody that has paid work experience, internship, and co-op and gets to that higher level, or as we were talking about with the apprenticeship programs, starting somebody off where they're working at the same time that they start their education, and it really just solidifies the learning that's happening in the classroom.
Yeah, it's a reinforcement.
Yeah.
So the apprenticeship program, that we're working on, I find fascinating because in my mind, until I met you, when I heard of the term apprenticeship, number one, I thought of a TV show. That's come and gone. But the other thing is, when I think of apprenticeships, I think of kind of like old school 1800s. Blacksmith.
Sure. Hard labor, skilled trades.
Yes.
And that is, still traditionally what the majority of apprentices are in the skilled trades. But there's major expansion. I think we're up to over 1,900 approved occupations from the Department of Labor that can be apprenticeable. And so I think, or that are approved already as you can put them in an apprenticeship program. So it's just a process that you've got to really define what you expect a student to be able to learn by the end of their training program. And that's supported by the employer on the job training and also the educational programs and so reinforcement is happening just throughout the entire program.
So what amazed me about that of the 1,900 is how many of them are in, quote unquote new technologies.
Oh yes, definitely.
Things that weren't around 5 years ago.
Right. And any occupation, if it's not on the list, you can submit it to have it be considered. And as long as it has that component of someone that's mentoring, someone that's already an expert that's willing to take the time and energy to train a student and to give them their knowledge, that's something that, that to me, that's an excellent model as long as there's commitment on both sides.
And you need that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So where do you see that going?
I'm interested to see where it goes, especially with what has happened over the past couple years. I think there was a ton of momentum in apprenticeship, and there still is. And I think that it probably will get back to that space where we have lots of students and emerging job seekers that want to go into that really committed, high dedicated, like high touch. I mean, it's the most in-depth and intensive form of experiential learning. So it does take a lot of commitment, but it also allows for this group of people, not just right out of high school, but a group of people that maybe are underemployed, that don't have the level of economic prosperity that they are, envisioned for themselves, right? But it's hard for somebody that's in a position where they're already working full time in a job that's sustaining their life to go back to school and not have a form of income. And so apprenticeship kind of solves that problem a little bit. So I see that that's a really big space.
That's a great, because as an employer side, I hadn't recognized that.
Yeah.
We were in a community meeting a couple of weeks ago, and the discussion was around alternative pathways, and that was the phrase that kept being used, and so I can see that as an alternative pathway, because you solve the problem of economics because they're employed,
right?
And the education is there to satisfy career growth, personal growth.
And that I think that from the employer's perspective, the commitment to be able to say, okay, so we understand that potentially these people that are maybe coming into this apprenticeship program are part of the ALICE group, which is the asset limited income constrained.
Okay.
And so they're but employed, right? And so that's that ALICE report. And so that's that group that we're talking about that is a great target for these types of programs. But from the employer's perspective, you've got to put time in. You've got to put, you don't have to, it's not a requirement, but the majority of people that put apprentices through programs pay for their tuition, and then they pay them a wage while for their working. Now so the process is, if somebody that were an IT support person at the end of that's experienced makes $26 an hour, you might start them as an apprentice at $18 an hour and then work their way up to that.
Got it.
And so it allows them to still have a pretty decent income while they're in school.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Love that.
Yeah. It's a great, I've only started an apprenticeship since August. Before, it was always internship and co-op for me.
Right.
So those are the programs that's my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
So apprenticeship is huge and somewhat complex in comparison to some of those programs, but the outcomes just seem pretty awesome.
Right. So share some of those numbers. You've shared them with me.
Yeah.
If you remember them off the top of your head about retention.
Yeah, the retention for employees, and I know that you guys, have kind of talked about that in a couple of your sessions of that. Like, how do we think about employee retention? Because it's very important, and especially now with the labor market as it is. But the retention for apprentices nationwide, over 90% of apprentices are still with the company that put them through the apprenticeship 3 years after, and that's the data point that they're measuring. So beyond that, I don't know what the data is, but that point of where they're doing the research is that still over 90% are with their company.
Well, that's incredible.
And I think that's the most common concern that I hear from employers that want to do tuition reimbursement or do something that supports somebody getting an education. Is that, well, if I give them the money up front, they're just going to leave once they're done. And so I think that's another piece of the conversation, that thinking about what keeps them with your company beyond just tuition.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So
yeah, it's got to be a good place to work. You have to have a fun environment, I think,
Sure.
And then you'd mentioned the you were alluding to the pandemic, how it kind of interrupted a lot of the momentum.
Yeah.
But now that people are coming back to work, and mostly in a hybrid environment, from what I understand.
Yeah.
But still to be able to create that culture, that allows, people, and that people want to stay and that people want to grow
Right.
with the company.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it.
And I think that another piece of, that we haven't really touched on yet, but I know that you and I have talked about in some of our conversations is it also allows for a greater diversity in the people that you're hiring. It gives you this new space to really help people that maybe don't normally apply for your positions to consider a role with your organization, and for you to showcase during that training time what a great company you are to work for, and the commitment that you put into the growth of your employees, to have them on, a plan that allows them to be connected to a career path and not just the job they're in. And that's also something that, we just feel is very important for apprenticeships is, it gives that opportunity to be very inclusive of a greater body of potential candidates.
And in Washtenaw, it's a very competitive market.
Absolutely. Right.
There's a lot of wonderful technology companies.
Yeah.
Which I include us as one of them.
Yes, good.
But
as you should.
Yeah. But because of that, there's a lot of competition for the talent pool.
Absolutely.
And as an employer, I see this as an avenue for us to bring people who might not typically be, in the pool. Yeah. And we can provide the education, the growth, and that, I think, earns loyalty.
Absolutely. And that's, I think, that from my perspective, and I don't have survey responses on this, but the commitment that you're making as an employer to, one, teach them the employee, the company culture as they're going through, to make them feel as a part of your ecosystem, and to that push to put them through gives them a natural, like, they really lifted me up, right? Yeah. And so I want to give that back.
Yeah, and they become part of the family.
Yeah, and so I think that just seems like, one of the reasons from my perspective where I think the apprenticeship really is a great way for you to think about as a retention initiative.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's what else, what do you, if you were to peer around the corner, so to speak, what do you see coming down the road for you and your group?
In our group,
and in the community college as a whole.
Yeah, we've got some awesome programs at Washtenaw. We're becoming very agile. A lot of our programs are moving into like stackable certifications into the associate degrees, and so that gives people these milestones that can be achieved very quickly in some cases. In some of our business degrees that we're putting in the fall, it can be, you can get a certificate within almost a half a semester, right? So you can take your and you've got lots of flexibility in how you take your coursework. So you can take them online or you can take them in person. So I think that will only continue to grow, and people are really being thoughtful about, we want to make sure that our students are able to achieve something and see something tangible very quickly. And it helps people go like, okay, I did that, right? And now we can keep going and get to that next step and next step.
That's great, because that kind of plays into society right now.
Yeah,
It's a little bit more of a shorter span. People want to see results quicker and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
That's neat.
Yeah.
And I like what I'm hearing about the flexibility.
Yes, right.
Because today's world, everything is just moving at a different pace. It's accelerated, but it seems like the time between the changes is shortening.
Yeah.
And addressing that market.
Yeah. And actually, when I think about that for apprenticeship, if you have your normal model, right, where a student, and this is not going away, but you have a student that's in a degree program for 2 years, by the time they start to when they finish, maybe some of their early classes, the technology may have already changed, right?
Yeah,
most likely it has. So you take away a little bit of that impact by having somebody that's in industry as they're doing their program.
Yeah, we have clients today, right, where the tech stack that we have in place is different than the tech stack that we had in place 3 months ago.
3 months ago.
I mean, and it's a response
Yeah.
to what's occurring in the marketplace.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's gonna.
It's only going to get
Yeah.
quicker.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
The time between change is shortening.
Yes.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So it'll be a crazy thing. So this has been awesome. I appreciate the education.
Of course. Yeah.
So
Awesome to talk with you.
so what's your favorite bourbon?
I knew that question was coming. I have 3 bottles of bourbon in my house.
Yeah.
Eagle Rare.
Mm-hmm.
What's the other one? Bullet. And
Is that's the bourbon or the whiskey?
the bourbon.
Bourbon, okay.
Yeah. And
I mean the rye. They have the rye.
oh,
and the
the
bourbon.
rye.
Yeah.
No, I'm not super into the rye.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Old Granddad.
Really?
Yep. Those are the 3.
Wow.
Now, my dad is a Scotch guy. My son's middle name is Jameson. So, but that doesn't really have anything to do with the whiskey. It's my grandmother's maiden name, but we've got some ties to whiskey.
So this is for Kings, Not Gods.
That's great.
And, a local company here in Southeast Michigan. And one of our sponsors.
Very good.
So let's have a toast. I appreciated the education.
Thank you for your time.
Give it a try and let's see what you think.
Easy to drink.
That's what I think also.
Uh-huh.
And I really enjoy the flavor on it.
Yeah.
So very good. Thank you very much. Have a great day. And for our show, for Kevin, we missed you today, bud. So we'll be back next week. We'll see you. Bye.